Welcome to the Voice of MPE, the official podcast of Merchant Payments Ecosystem, Europe's largest merchant payments conference. Today, we are at the 16th Annual MPE Conference, MPE 2023. This podcast brings you interviews with payment industry leaders and professionals from the entire payment world. For more information, head over to www.merchantpaymentsecosystem.com. Today, we are talking about open banking as an enabler. Ron Van Wezel from AITE Group, moderator of this session, spoke with Daniel Van Delft from Currents, Katarina Lushnik from AIIA, Brian Hanrahan from Nuapay, and Michalis Michalaides from BPC Banking Technologies. How are merchants and banks benefiting from the new era of financial motivation? Listen to this episode and learn about open banking partnerships and alliances, from suppliers to business collaborators and from vendors to customers.
First, give the opportunity to introduce the two speakers that hadn't the opportunity yet to talk a bit about what they do. So maybe Daniel, give a quick intro on your position.
Delighted to. Dave Delft, I'm the Chief Executive of Currents. You probably will not know Currents, but you will definitely know the Ideal scheme because it was mentioned already a few times, and as such, a little bit the open banking scheme avant la lettre, as we say in the Netherlands, although it's still a branded scheme. But there are a lot of use cases which are already out there in the Dutch market and which can find its way through open banking in the near future, we believe, in other countries as well. So that's in a nutshell where I'm at and why I'm here today.
Thank you, Daniel. Katarina?
Yeah, my name is Katrina Lushnik. I'm heading up the payment solution sales in Aya. You might not know Aya, but you know MasterCard for sure. So Aya has been recently acquired by MasterCard. We are the open banking, European open banking platform of MasterCard. And quite interesting, MasterCard is active in open banking since quite a while. And we're really up being a multi-rail platform and trying to deeply embed open banking payments, but in general, open banking data into our offering. And that's why we're here.
Thank you. So we've seen a lot of already about opportunities for open banking from the two presentations. So a lot of positive news. Recently checked the UK numbers. So there were about 8 million payments done in February this year, which is like more than 100% more than the year before. So you're looking at probably like 150, 200 million payments over 2023, which is good, but it's very, very small fraction of the payment volume in the UK, which is about 40 billion payments for consumers only. So the question is, will open banking payments, open payments continue to grow, and why? So what is the customer adoption challenges here? There was another presentation here recently where somebody said, it's not going to work in markets where credit cards are strong. And why not? Because credit cards come with a lot of benefits, especially for, let's say, the higher segment, right? So full security, full insurance for your payments. You have the loyalty points. So will open banking maybe play only on the debit card space, or maybe are there additional spaces where cards not that many use? So how can you see a consumer adoption getting traction? It will continue to have traction over the next couple of years. Daniel, maybe start with you on that one.
Yes, I think quite easy for us to answer, as we are indeed by nature an account-to-account system and have had the chance actually to grow over the last 17 years due to the fact that indeed the credit card side was not so well developed in the Netherlands, to be very honest. Overall, I think the ecosystem will evolve in such a way that for open banking or account-to-account systems at large, there will be a market, because it's always, and that's what we see as well, and specifically here with MPE being the merchant side, a two-sided market. Yes, the consumers are maybe linked into a specific kind of payments because they receive loyalty or they receive additional points. But in the end, it has to pay it out somewhere. And I think with the overall, and that's why actually in the Netherlands, Ideal became so successful, because it really received a push of the merchant community. And I think that latter, and that's where actually your presentation came into as well, it's not only a matter of cost, it's also a matter of customer experience. And actually, if we have that flow right, if we can convince the consumer with additional value adds on top of the open banking layer, I'm sure that it will start to work out. The only thing is we have to find a real resolution to the friction which still is there on the open banking side. It's not so frictionless as other payment means are at the moment.
Yeah. Maybe can you comment on that, Katrina? So, comparing open banking payments with the card payments, are they easier are they more frictionless compared to the current card flow? Or what are the challenges there, do you think?
Yeah, I think there is one uniqueness for open banking as a technology concept, and we heard a lot about benefits. Brian talked about it, Daniel, Michele. So I think we are all on the same page if it comes to benefits. But what we sometimes underestimate how easy it is from a technology perspective to integrate open banking payments, and this is unique. Yeah, and might also be more or less also the main success why the acceptance will easily adopt open banking payments, because it's at the end, it's connecting one API to the other and call whenever you want a payment API. And that's unique because it brings flexibility, and this whole thing about embedded finance embediment is simply out of the fact that technically or from a technological perspective, it's so easy to integrate open banking payment. And this comes with a lot of flexibility. And I think that's also why we are so keen to see more and more use cases supported by open banking. And that's quite unique. And maybe also compared to card, brings additional consumer experience because it's by nature omnichannel, it's by nature flexible, and backed up with a technology which is really quite straightforward.
Yeah, what's your take on that, Brian? You mentioned a couple of points already, but
yeah, pretty make 2 points. First, I think so. We're typically seeing it replace or displace, debit cards or manual bank transfers rather than credit transfers, and it's mostly down to the consumer convenience advantage. Particularly with 3D Secure, it's become quite difficult with cards in some countries. So that's the first point. I think in terms of the adoption curve, we're moving now from the point where a lot of kind of merchants came directly to open banking providers for some of the early adopter cases. So like the UK HMRC, tax authorities, etc. What's now happening, or has largely kind of happened even, is that many of the acquirers and PSPs have partnered with somebody like NuaPay, and they've embedded it in their gateway and made it 10 times easier for those merchants to now just turn it on. And that's just kind of starting to build momentum now. That's really the essential part of I suppose adoption, right? Because if it's not on the menu at the merchant, then the consumer can't choose it. And I think that's also kind of what we're doing at the moment for the last few years, is building up that distribution and availability.
Yeah, great points. Michele, in terms of the consumer adoption, so from a merchant perspective, open banking is the number of advantages that merchants have. But how do you basically convince a customer to leave the card in the pocket and use the different payment method? What the merchant is doing, in your experience, to drive customers to use open banking if it's so profitable for them, but the merchant the consumer may just continue to use what they always used, right? Yeah. It's free anyway.
I think it's a combination of the factors that have been mentioned. That the tech is, Katrina mentioned it, and she was quite right. The tech is there. It's not the tech is not the problem. It's the presentation layer is one of the issues. So how do you actually put it in front of the consumers so that they can make the right choice, and how you actually handle the user experience. Now, from our perspective, we are a tech company, so what we can facilitate the payment flow, and we are pretty confident about that. But ultimately, you need to have a collaborative setup. I mean, the success of open banking is based on a partnership, in my view, because there's a number of people that need to come together to have all of these ingredients. We kind of we take cards for granted because they've been around for so long, but we have to give it to the fact that that experience, that seamless experience that we all take for granted and understand, it took years for it to be smoothed out, and it took years for the process to migrate, from the physical card to the digital card to the wallet and all of those, so that they can actually flow in a way that's almost transparent to you and you don't even think about. So it's not easy to replicate that user experience, but I think on a use case basis, once we start to iron that out, open banking will explode because it has a lot of advantages.
Right. By the way, dear audience, if you want to have questions, you can use the Slido. It should be showing up on the screen. So if you want to interfere in our debate, please do so. Regarding the merchant benefits, compared to PrestiCard, it is probably easy to see where open banking experience can be better. But of course, we're moving towards digital wallets that are more easy to, more convenient for consumer to use. So, what are specific advantages, maybe even challenges for merchants to have in terms of adopting open banking? Can you type a view on that one, Katrina?
Yeah, I think a lot we heard already. So a lot about this, about risk mitigation, no chargeback, almost no fraud, flexible integration, conversion. I think it's also to a certain extent opening up new revenue sources. We haven't been talking a lot about invoices, but invoices, for instance, is an additional payment. Let's call it even a payment journey, which is currently still not totally automized. So in the Nordics, for instance, you see a lot of traction in embedding payment links. We heard about payment links, but putting that in an invoice and offer an end-to-end reconciliation feature, that's extremely powerful. And that's also something which is extremely interesting for merchants. And partnering up, I see Eve sitting here in the audience, partnering up with Avardo, for instance, they're providing merchants with a white label invoice solution, and this being embedded with open banking payments. That's also for merchants offering new consumer experience, new ways to pay, and here open banking fits nicely into.
Yeah, there's something going called soft POS, right? So there's the ability to actually, for a small merchant, for instance, a restaurant, to use your mobile phone as a payment acceptance device. That's going to be, probably exploding in the coming years. The problem is, if somebody doesn't have a contactless card or something goes wrong in that communication, you need to have backup. So that's also where it's mentioned that Pay by Link could be like a backup solution for this type of solutions. Daniel, go ahead.
Because I do not believe so much in soft POS. Although I worked in my Visa days, I believe that we will see a faster move towards digital wallets going forward. And that will also open up for additional open banking payment methods easier and faster, because you do not need, let's say the receiver, the merchant side, whether it's e-com, whether it's in a merchant physical location, will in the end be exactly the same. So the technology, as you all stated, will allow us to do that in a as secure way as point of sale currently is.
All right, it's maybe also a good of you, Brian. So in terms of physical payments and open banking, is that a happy marriage, or? Yeah.
So it has some use cases where it's viable, and when I'm talking about open banking, it does depend on the country, So for example, I think we touched on cases where there is a QR code model, and that's okay. When you try to get into let's say the kind of high street retail, so supermarkets, coffee shops, that kind of stuff, that requires, I would say, what's called variable recurring payments. So in the UK, that's kind of an additional standard. It's not there yet. So it's being discussed. There's standards being debated. There's a lot of ingredients involved in making that work, which I think would take a bit of time. But at that point, once, let's say if and when that's agreed, then why wouldn't digital wallets be powered by that same, infrastructure, right? Because like while an Apple Pay or whatever is a very convenient consumer experience at the kind of, let's say nearly the identity verification layer, it's then sitting on card rails, which are still expensive and slow to settle. So why not put that on, account to account rails? And, so I think it's going to be interesting to see how these things interplay. But you still need more ingredients, right? We don't have everything we need in the current open banking infrastructure to get there yet.
Thanks. Given time, maybe give the audience the opportunity to have some answers, questions here. So, question about open banking for business-to-business payments. So, opportunities and barriers there. Michal, do you have a view on B2B payments? Is that something that is going to be important for open banking? Is it a good opportunity?
I think, there's definitely, it goes back to that basic same principle. It's use cases. And I think there's definitely a lot of opportunity in the B2B space. I mean, invoicing was mentioned as an example. I mean, that's a classic B2B solution that can easily be accommodated by open banking. Request to pay is another kind of magic word that's been hovering around. I mean, we will see request to pay solutions coming into the market quickly, and that's also very much a B2B solution. So, absolutely. Again, the technology is waiting for the right use cases to take them to market. It's not the other way around.
Yeah. I tend to agree. Open banking is maybe even better for business-to-business payments, just what you mentioned, right? The invoicing, the automated reconciliation, which basically the holy grail for B2B. Yeah, agree. Daniel, any B2B insights from your side?
Yeah, sure. And also from practice, actually, because we see already a lot of use cases being used, which are actually kind of more consumer-oriented, which are handled through iDEAL in an account-to-account way. But I would say there are also a few limitations to it, and actually broadening it to the real B2B space, because it's simply different. We need more security to be built in.
Yeah.
And we're not there yet. It's in the Netherlands, at least, based more on trust than it is on pure ledger technology, so to speak. But I think definitely there is also a lot of room there to, let's say, have a sustainable, from a payment scheme perspective, sustainable business model if you can incorporate B2B payments in an effective way. So, because the consumer side is more difficult than the B2B side in terms of revenue.
In terms of infrastructure, and maybe you look at you, Katrina, from Aya perspective. So, consumer accounts are regulated, right? But business accounts are not. So, is business accounts already easy to reach for you?
Yeah,
are the banks supporting that?
That's the great opportunity PSD2 brings, because payment accounts, we are regulating payment accounts, right? And payment accounts do not need to be consumer accounts. So we are also under regulation are business accounts, as long as they are payment accounts regulated by PSD2. And I think that's extremely interesting, because for me, the B is a bit of a replacement of SME. Yeah? So it's the smaller, medium-sized businesses, which are currently still, really keen to more digitize. They need to be more effective. They need to be cost efficient. And here, open banking as a technology concept can help a lot. And we have brought B2B cases live. Yeah? But as Daniel mentioned, there I think are still some hurdles which needs to be overcome. And I think we should really jointly work together to bring even more use cases to the B segment.
Yeah, we exchanged some figures recently about iDEAL having 70% market share. There is Blik in Poland at 70%. So, what's your take? Just the last question, very quickly. Will open banking ever cross the 50% payment volume threshold in Europe? And start with Brian on that easy question.
Well, look, that's the dream, isn't it? It's to get to iDEAL where the Netherlands has. Look, I think some of those schemes kind of have existed for a long time, right? They took kind of 10, 15 years. They had a consumer brand. It's hard to tell which ingredients are essential to get there. I think we can comfortably predict that we're going to get to 30, 40, 50%. I think that's going to take a little bit of time, but it does, look like that's the, the end state in most of the, let's say, PSD2 initiated countries, where this has become normal. But look, we're seeing it even in the UK, right, where, of course, open banking is a small part of the total. In individual merchants who have rolled out open banking, for example, particularly in the financial services space, where it's for maybe wallet loads or money into your investment or savings account, they're getting 70% of consumers choosing that option,
right?
Mostly because if they pay this way, they get credited on their account instantly. So you've got that immediate consumer value, that they'll just gravitate towards, right? So I think it'll depend on the merchant case, or merchant's kind of use case and industry, but it's looking more and more likely that that's going to be true.
You all buying into this? So will it happen?
Let's say, I truly believe here in partnership and evolution, because I do not see open banking as as only a separate silo. Because if we find the right solution and reuse strong brands like Ideal or Blick and present it to the consumer as normal Ideal payments, but in effect these are truly open banking payments, I think then we really can lift off. And then even broader, it would be better if we do this united from a European perspective, but that's a whole different ballgame.
I mean, just one comment on this. I think to get to that desired level, endorsement, I guess, by some major brands and organizations is key.
Yeah.
And I mean, to your point, I mean, if Ideal endorses a certain use cases and then takes them out to market, then it's a whole new ball game for open banking, because it's no longer just open banking. It's attached to a very recognizable brand, and that's the way to get to that magic number.
Great. So next year we'll probably talk about this again and see if we have made a step in the right direction to a common European open banking brand. It's not yet the case, but I think there's a lot of promise. Thank you very much, dear panel, for informative insights.
Thanks for tuning in to the official MPE podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to the show and check other video interviews with other industry leaders on our YouTube channel. For more content, follow Merchant Payments Ecosystem on LinkedIn and Twitter. Don't miss out on our Positivity magazine, and remember to subscribe to the MPE newsletter at www.merchantpaymentsecosystem.com.